Everyone is so cold. -3. Stay warm, everyone. I hope everyone's bundled up. 17. Ed, do you feel a little bit better? We're like stressing out here, but it's cold. It's much colder in other places.
I know what that is. I would like these people from Texas to go visit some of those places and know that it's going to be like that for the next 3 months there. And we'll make it through these next 3 days. We'll be just fine.
California is real quiet. Southern California, enjoying their temps right now. I see. Well, great. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock here Central. Ed, do you want to kick us off?
I will. I'd like to say hello to everybody. It is so great to see you all. This is I know Mondays are crazy in the animal world, but this is definitely a spot I keep on my calendar and very much look forward to being able to see everybody and kind of regroup on the different things that are going. I will kick us off with the question for today. Now that we take a look back on 2022, let's throw into the chat one accomplishment, big or small, that you're most proud of. And we're using this question since we are going to be talking about shelter data, that just try to think back and think about things that in your environment, your ecosystem, that you're proud of for 2022.
Thanks, Allison, for putting that in the chat, the prompt. I know it's a big question because you're looking back at the whole year, thinking of something that you're most proud of. I always put you on the spot, Bobby, but do you have one that you're proud of for this year? It can be a small one too. Doesn't have to be huge.
Surviving.
Yeah.
I think just making it to another year and still being incredibly optimistic about the work. I know was a challenging couple of years during COVID since we've pivoted our work so much. And so it's just so inspiring to see so many folks hop on this call and just still so motivated to be better at what we do. So kudos to everyone on this call.
We got
Absolutely.
answers flying in, Claire. You see that? There's all kinds of stuff. That's great that on the fly, people are able to take a moment and sit back and think. We lose that very often because we're so caught up in our day-to-day.
I know. I just saw Maria. I read it as 1,000, but it's 1 million pets for life, medical and service provided. Congrats, Maria. That's incredible. And then hiring, that's a big one too. Hiring a full-time vet, staffing. Great job. I think it's hard, when challenges come at you every day, and sometimes looking at the data can be a little discouraging sometimes, but it's important to remember to reflect on wins. I'm trying to do that in meetings. I've learned this lesson of instead of jumping right into meetings with action items and tasks, but to prompt people on the wins too. It's a really good exercise. I would recommend it if you don't do that already, because it's easy to forget about these things. Oh, $100,000 grant, Capital Humane. Congrats, Sierra. It's exciting. So as keep putting those in the chat, I know, Allison, we want to prompt a poll. And it's a little bit of a housekeeping issue, but if you were joining today's meeting, we're trying to figure out with Zoom if we're having any issues, but did you have to fill out a registration form? Easy poll, just a yes or no, if you don't mind answering that.
We know some people have had issues, and we apologize for that. We made a minor change on the registration on the settings, but that was not supposed to trigger any changes with Zoom and your registration experience. So we want to find out how many and maybe who has been having the problem. So thank you so much for answering the poll, and we will fix that issue as soon as we possibly can. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Allison, and thanks everyone for answering that. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Happy Monday. Feel free in the chat. There's a lot of things going on. We've got a poll, but also feel free to put your name and organization where you're coming from. But you'll also see some huge accomplishments and celebrations in the chat. We're just reflecting back on 2022, going with the theme of our presentation today and looking at data. But what are the even big or small? What are some accomplishments you're most proud of from 2022? it's easy to just be steamrolling into the next year, but really good to look back and see what you're most proud of. Thank you. This is great. Keep them coming. Good morning, Honolulu. Thanks for being here in Hawaii. All right, well, thanks everyone for being here and happy Monday. We would love to open it up now for national updates. So feel free to unmute if you have a national update to share.
Hey everybody, it's Kathy from Canada. Just a reminder that our early bird registration for the Humane Canada Summit for Animals happening in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia in May. The early bird discounts end tomorrow. So you get a $50 discount if you register before end of day tomorrow. And of course, because many of you folks are actually from the US, it will cost you less. So we'd love to see you there.
Hi, it's Sheila from Maddie's Fund. Just an update that our next Maddie's Insights webcast is going to be on Thursday, February 9th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be hearing from Dr. Kristen Vitale on a pretty exciting subject. It's about short-term foster programs for shelter cats, beneficial or problematic. She will be sharing the research she did looking at the social behavior and stress levels of cats that stayed in the shelter versus cats that left the shelter for short-term foster for either one night or 1 week. So we'll put our registration link in chat and hope some of you can join us for that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Irene and also from Maddie's Fund. Today is the last day to apply for the Open Arms Challenge brought to you by 23 national organizations. So this challenge is all about opening hearts and minds to more accessible and inclusive practices. So if that's not incentive enough to join, the funding partners have pulled together $420,000 in grants, which is the most of any previous challenge. So we hope to see your application by 5 p.m. Pacific today. And for anyone who is new to these calls, Maddie's Fund does give away up to $10,000 for joining these monthly community conversations or watching on demand, so long as you enter by using the link, and Amber dropped that in the chat, so thank you. Each person at your organization can enter, so the more people who watch from your organization, the more chances you have to win. Thank you.
Vincent from Haas. Just a reminder, we have the second part of our H and Haas webinar, which we're emphasizing the human and Haas webinar on Thursday. We already have close to 300 people signed up to attend, and look forward to seeing you there.
Hi everyone, it's Summer from Cuddly. Wanted to announce that Aurora and I have been with the team now about a year and have been working really hard on our Cuddly Pet Pantry program. We are actually having a name change and we are rebranding into Cuddly Community Programs because we have so many awesome partners that have wish lists with us for other things other than Pet Pantry. So we're going to be doing another demo call to introduce ways Cuddly can help with your wish list donations. I'll put the registration link in the chat, but we'd love to see you there.
Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer from Humane Society of the United States, and just dropping a note here to remind everybody to register early for Animal Care Expo 2023. That will be held April 3rd through 6th in New Orleans. Our advanced registration closes on February 6th, and I'll drop the link in the chat as well.
Hi, everyone. It's Whitney from Best Friends Animal Society, and I just wanted to give a reminder, we have 1 week left to submit speaker proposals for our conference, which is held in August 10th through 12th in Houston, Texas. And I'll share more information in the chat, but the submission deadline is next Monday, February 6th, and there's more details on topic ideas, tips on how to make your submission stand out, and any other questions you may have about the conference. So I will share that, and yeah, make sure to check it out. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle from the Animal Hospice Group. We're proud to be exhibitors this week at a free virtual conference by the Shelter Animal Reiki Association, or SARA. I'll tell you what we know about them. They're a global nonprofit renowned for their work in bringing peace and stress relief to shelter and sanctuary animals. Since 2008, they've organized an incredible free online conference because we know that for the world to change, the way we interact with animals needs to change. Animals show us daily how to be better, kinder, and more resilient, and now it's time to follow their lead. So I'll go ahead and put the information in the chat again. It is this week, February 2nd through the 4th, and there's how you can register today. So I hope you'll stop by our group, Animal Hospice Group. Thanks everyone, hope to see you there.
Hey everyone, Charlotte with one more Maddie's Fund update for everyone. So just want to let you know that today and tomorrow are your last chances to enter to win our $3,000 grant giveaway on Maddie's Pet Forum. So if you've made a contribution on the forum in January, you'll be entered to win. I'll drop some links in the chat so you can learn more about this giveaway if it's your first time hearing about it, and some discussions you can weigh in on.
Cool. I think we got anything else nationally? I don't see anybody pop into the front here. Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. We will keep things moving. Very, very excited about our speakers today. And I had asked that if I could be one of the co-hosts. We have some members from Shelter's Animal Count on today. I am an executive board member for SAC, and I could not be more proud of the work our executive director Stephanie has done and her small but mighty team. They're going to be giving a look back on the state of animal sheltering in 2022. Anybody knows me, data, you have to be making data-driven decisions here in this industry, and this has been a very, very difficult year. But being able to look back to see trends, good, and quite frankly, looking at not so good trends really can help to formulate good plans. So with that, I don't want to take away any more time from them. We have Samantha Hill, the Director of Data and Technology for Shelter Animals Count. And we have Stephanie Filer, the Executive Director for Shelter Animal Count. Samantha and Stephanie, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Ed. Well, we're excited to be here with everybody to share some really interesting data, some that will be surprising, I think, but a lot that will be from 2022 and earlier. So just a quick refresher for anyone who's unaware or just needs a reminder, Shelter Animals Count, we've been around for 10 years now, and we were formed to be a data collection organization, completely independent and neutral, our own 501c3 that collects data and uses it with the utmost integrity and safety for animal shelters, both intake and outcome, and also now service providers from shelters and then outside of shelters as well, who provide pet-related services to people who have owned pets. So we have done a lot of changes in the past 12 to 18 months that include a lot more dashboards, a lot more reports. So if you aren't already signed up to get our emails, definitely sign up. We have a lot of grants that we give away throughout the year for entering data, and we have done a lot of things to make it more seamless so that it can be automated as well. So next slide, Samantha. So here is just one quick screenshot of our new dashboard that we released towards the end of last year that I think has been extremely valuable. Samantha's going to dive into the population balance calculation and what that is and what that's looked like in the past few years later on in this call. But you can also go through our website and now look at 4-year trends comparison. This is all updated through the end of December. This is all you can filter it in real time and look at different geographic areas. You can look at regions, you can look at state. You can look at by org type, by species, and you'll see the charts and graphs start to change in real time as you start to dig into that data. This is the only dashboard that we currently offer that does do this 4-year comparison. It means that all organizations have full 4 years of data in order to be included, so that we're making sure to include organizations apples to apples instead of partial data with different organizations year over year. So you'll be able to look at things from our PBC, our population's balance calculation, change in intakes, outcomes, and all sort of other details on the rate of those things, and also the number of animals over the past 4 years. So with that, I will kick it over to Samantha to walk through the report that we will be releasing tomorrow.
Thanks, Stephanie. Really happy to be here to share our full year report for 2022. This 2022 report includes 1,000 organizations representing 1.5 million animals that were taken from communities throughout the country. These organizations reported full year of data for 2019, 2020, and 2021. And in 2022, and this allows for that accurate trending analysis. Organizations included in the analysis represent government-funded shelters such as government animal services, shelters with government contracts, rescues with government contracts, private shelters without government contracts, and foster-based rescue organizations. The government-funded organizations represent the largest percentage of community intakes in the data set, while rescues are the largest percentage of organization types. This presentation will be focused on intakes and outcomes for dogs and cats, but we also have included data in the report on community services and additional species. If you're interested in learning more about either of those, we encourage you to check out our dashboards, which are refreshed monthly, as Stephanie mentioned. As a reminder, this is a report of a snapshot of data at a specific point in time, and our dashboards are updated regularly. So data that we're sharing today may be slightly different than what you see on that dashboard when you go to it. We would also like to note that these are national averages being presented. So as individual organizations, you may be experiencing different trends than this, and we encourage you to look at your organization's data compared to these findings. If you visit our animal welfare glossary, you can get more information on the calculations that I'll be talking through today. And with that, our first highlight for 2022 is that the number of animals entering shelters continues to slightly increase each year since the pandemic, but it is still 16% less than 2019. I'm seeing actually, is there like a marker on here? Yeah, erase all ink. Any idea how I erase this ink by chance?
I believe you go up to the top and of your screen share and where it says annotations. On the other hand, it's really not that distracting.
Okay.
Can you control Z?
Control Z. And then I have an eraser. It says erase all ink on slide, but it's not erasing it. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Okay, well, we'll continue on. We've got a red mark on the screen, unfortunately. Sorry about that. So the number of animals entering shelters continues to slightly increase each year. Like I said, we are still 16% less than 2019. Dog intakes represented the majority of this increase in 2021. Okay, that's actually, let me stop sharing. I'm going to reshare here.
I think that's a good way to get the marker erased too.
Because otherwise it's gonna. All right, sorry about this, technical difficulties.
Will you be sharing these slides on Maddie's Pet Forum? Somebody,
Yes, we
I think
absolutely
so.
will. Okay.
And we'll also be releasing the full report tomorrow that will dive into what we'll be covering today and more. So keep an eye out for your email. If you don't already get our emails, shoot us an email at info@shelteranimalscount.org and we can get you added before we send it out tomorrow.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, let's try this again. Now it's gone. Okay. So for community intakes, we saw there was an increase from 2021 by 4%. As we said, though, this is 16% less than 2019. As intakes are increasing, the industry is moving closer to 2019 levels, but it is at a slow pace. With that being said, we can expect the intake increase to continue in 2023. From left to right on this chart, you're seeing community intakes by year and for each species. Dog intakes increased more than 2020, more in 2021, more compared to 2021 than cat intakes. But cat intakes are currently closer to 2019 levels than dogs are. And so here, just highlighting those changes for you for cats versus dogs. The number of animals in shelters today, that increase is a result of a number of factors, but nationally it is not being driven by an increase in owner surrenders, according to this national data. So owner surrenders are up compared to 2021 by about 2%. They are still below 2019 levels at 15%. As intakes increased overall, we would expect to see this. We would expect to see the intake types also increasing. So cats increased by about 2% from 21, while dogs increased by less than 1%. We're frequently asked specifically if there are owner surrenders have increased, the reasons for owner surrenders have increased, such as housing or financial reasons. As an organization, you may see these reasons shifting from year to year, and those could be impacted by various outside factors. So as we start working on animal level data this year, SAC will be sharing some insights that we see at a national level on those reasons. So what is driving intake increases from community? Well, stray intake is actually what is driving this increase. We saw 6% more dogs and cats enter organizations as stray than they did in 2021. Dogs actually saw the largest increase in stray intake by 12%. And since we know that the number of dogs and cats entering shelters has increased overall, we also look at the rates of these intake types to help normalize the changes in those overall numbers. So while the previous slide was looking at changes in the number of animals coming in as owner surrenders and strays, this is looking at, as a whole of all intakes, what portion of those intakes are these intake types, just to help to normalize those changes we're seeing. So here you'll see that nationally, stray intakes actually dropped from 51% in 2019 to 47% in 2020. This is most likely due to limited hours and intake during COVID. That percentage increased then in 2021 and is now back to 50% here in 2022. So while we see that stray intake is driving the overall increase in intakes from the community, there's not an alarming shift in the percentage of total intakes to be stray at this point in time. Overall, we see that owner surrenders have actually remained consistent at about 25% across all 4 years. So again, we're not seeing this alarming trend of an increase in owner surrenders as a portion of total intakes. Now, we're going to drill down into the cat intake types as a percent of total intakes. So While cat intakes haven't increased very much from 2021, they are closer to 2019 levels than dogs are. Interestingly, we can see that stray cats are entering shelters at a lower percentage than they were in 2019. So it went from 54% down to 51%. This could be due to trap neuter return programs actually working. So it could be an indicator of that, as well as possibly managed intake programs. Owner surrenders for cats have increased more than dogs, and the rate of these surrenders is now up 1 percentage point from 2019. So that did see a shift in the rate for cats. Transfers in, you'll see that's the gray portion of the pie charts. Those are also up from 2019, though they are lower than their peak in 2020. So 17% was 2020, and we're back down to 15.5%. So for dogs, which we are, like I said, getting lots of questions on whether dogs are being relinquished at higher rates this year, you'll see that owner surrender rates for dogs are very consistent still across the 4-year period. They're actually 1 percentage point lower in 2022 compared to 2021 at 24% and 25%. Stray intakes, on the other hand, you'll see have actually increased. So stray intakes went from 46% up to about 49% for dogs. Transfers in have also decreased, and they are below 2019 rates. And we're going to be sharing more about transfer data when we provide more data on organization type breakdowns. And as all of you know, intakes are only part of the story when we're trying to understand what's going on in the industry. So when we look at total outcomes right now are slightly higher than 2021. Live outcomes have actually remained pretty similar to 2021, while non-live outcomes are increasing. So as mentioned, national outcomes, we're seeing a 1% increase in total outcomes. This is all outcome types, live or non-live. This change is we're still 19% less than 2019, where our intakes are only about 16% less. Our outcomes are now 19% less, giving us a bit of a gap there. So similar to intakes, cat outcomes are actually closer to 2019 levels. They're at about 16% less than 2019, while dogs are seeing a 22% outcome difference from 2019. Now, non-live outcomes are increasing. They're still well below 2019 levels, 33% below 2019, but we did see an uptick in non-live outcomes from 2021 by 12%. As you can see from the chart, non-live outcomes for dogs increased by about 40% from 2021, while cats saw a decrease of 3%. However, if you look at how much lower dog non-live outcomes are compared to non-live outcomes for cats, we see really an interesting shift here. So cat non-live outcomes have essentially been cut in half from 2019. And they've been able to sustain that level. They're really staying pretty consistent, where the dog outcomes 2021 is almost like it was normalizing. And so it'll be interesting to see in 2023 how sustainable the level is currently in 2022. The number of total live outcomes, these have remained the same pretty much since 2021. We really only see, we don't see much of a shift in those. Cats are much closer to their 2019 levels, and dogs are still about 23% lower than 2019. You'll see too, this chart we find interesting with the 2019, you see that dogs have more live outcomes than cats do. And that trend has actually shifted. So in 2021 and 2022, cats had more live outcomes than dogs did. From the chart, you can see it's pretty even, but there is a slight difference there. So we're seeing that as an interesting trend. So let's take a closer look at adoptions as a part of these live outcomes. Adoptions increased for both dogs and cats compared to 2021. Dog adoptions increased by 4%, while cat adoptions increased by 2%. This is, again, a change in the number of adoptions for these animals. So to normalize the shifts in intakes and these adoptions, we look at what percentage of intakes are adoptions or adoption rates. Dog adoption rates have remained very consistent throughout 4 quarters of 2022, with 53% being adopted by year end. Cats had higher overall adoption rates than dogs at 64%, but they saw much more variability in their rates by quarter. So in this chart on the right side, I kept the national adoption change for you and the number of adoptions. While the left side of this has charts that the teal blue in the background are the number of intakes per quarter for cats and dogs. And I think, oh, there we go, for cats and dogs. And then the yellow are actually showing the number of adoptions. So it's just the number there to give you a sense of how intakes shift each quarter and how those adoption numbers shift. And then the percentages are actually the portion of intakes that had an adoption result. So you can see that dogs have this consistent adoption rate every quarter, between 50 and 55%, they're being adopted out. The teal bar shows there aren't large swings in intakes for dogs across all 4 quarters. And so, everything stays pretty consistent. Cats, on the other hand, tend to have higher adoption rates than dogs across the board, except for Q2. So in Q2, that's when their intakes increase, and we see that adoption rate actually decrease. That as the intakes then decrease in Q3 and Q4, those adoption rates they increase again, to getting pretty high in Q4 there. This isn't a trend that this isn't a new trend. Comparing it to 2019 and 2020 and 2021, this is still pretty much the same, but it could be useful for thinking about when to increase adoptions for these species. So overall, nationally, we saw that 4% more animals entered shelters than left in 2022. This is actually the largest gap between intakes and outcomes that we've seen in this 4-year period. So our population balance calculation, if you are unfamiliar, it takes total outcomes, live and non-live, and divides them by total intakes during a period of time to determine whether animals are entering and leaving at the same rate. The pending gap are animals that have entered but did not have an outcome and therefore are still in shelter populations at the point in time that the data is collected. It's an indicator on industry capacity. And in Q2 of last year, we actually started forecasting where we felt the industry would end up regarding this population based on previous year's data. That estimate at the end of Q3 was that we would see the population balance of 95%. That would leave 5% of animals entering organizations still staying in organizations. In the chart above, you can see the teal line that's dotted in Q4. That was our estimation with the forecast model. And then the solid teal line is what we actually saw. And the actual national PBC ended up at 96%, which was pretty close to our forecast, though thankfully slightly better. And unfortunately, it is still the lowest population balance of all 4 years. So we have ended 2022 with fewer outcomes than intakes, and populations in organizations have increased. So currently we're in Q1 right now in January. Q1 is when we see the population balance from the highest level of Q4 going down again. As we enter Q2, that's where the lowest levels typically are. So by really increasing outcomes in Q1, we have an opportunity to shift this downward trend a little bit up, at least, even to get up to the 2019 level to help stabilize. So with the lowest population balance calculation in these 4 years, what is really impacting organizations' ability to outcome animals? According to a survey that was conducted in partnership with the ASPCA and Adopt-A-Pet in fall of 2022, shelters were asked which dynamics negatively impacted their ability to place or outcome animals in the past year. Among the most frequently cited dynamics were a lack of people-related resources, not enough foster support, not enough volunteer support, and not enough staffing support. Those were seen as one of the most frequently cited issues. Additional insights and resources on this survey results will be released by the ASPCA throughout the year. So keep an eye out for that. Now we know that organization types, they vary, and so does the intakes and outcomes for these organization types. So we're going to go through a few of those differences on intakes, outcomes, and PBC. There is going to be additional organization type data released in February as an addendum to our overall report being released tomorrow. So government-funded organizations, this would include shelters and rescues with government contracts and government animal service organizations. These organizations saw a 5% increase in community intakes from 2021 and are continuing to see 20% fewer intakes than 2019. Outcomes only increased about 2% and are 24% less than 2019. For these organizations, dogs are driving that increase in intakes from 21, while cat intakes have actually remained pretty much the same. Unlike nationally, cats are not closer to their 2019 levels. They are actually they're further away from 2019 than dog intakes are right now. While cat intakes stayed the same, we actually see that their outcome numbers decreased by 3%, and dog outcomes actually increased by 6%. So both species are still seeing 24% fewer outcomes than 2019. Privately funded shelters, these are shelters without a government contract. These organizations actually had an increase of 4% of intakes from 2021 and a decrease. This is very close though to 2019 levels at only 4% difference from their 2019 intake. So, but we're also seeing with their outcomes as government funded agency outcomes did not increase. As with the government funded agencies, these outcomes didn't increase by the same percentage of intake increase. Now by species, cat intakes actually increased more than dogs for this organization type. They are really close to 2019 levels at only 2% less than 2019. Outcomes also increased for cats more than dogs, and dog outcomes are 20% lower than 2019, while intakes are only 9% lower for dogs. Foster-based rescue organizations. These organizations actually had a very different experience with intakes and outcomes. In 2020, we know that foster-based rescues had increased community intakes, while all other organization types had decreases. So they had increased their number of strays, owner surrenders that were coming in from the community. In 2022, these organizations are still seeing higher intakes than 2019 by 12%. Their intakes have decreased slightly from 2021, probably in an attempt to get back to their normal level, but it hasn't decreased very much. Cat intakes are really the driving species for these intakes that you're seeing, these intake increases. And unfortunately, well, dog intakes are actually 7% lower, while those cat intake increases are 26% above 2019. Cat outcomes are also about 16% higher than 2019 levels, though, which is good. With these higher community intakes happening at these organizations, they are typically transfer partners for government funded and private shelters. And so with higher community intakes, they're not transferring in as many animals from those other organizations. And this is leading to a decrease in transfers out as an outcome for those other organization types. We'll be sharing some more again on this transfer data in the organization type breakdown reports that we'll be releasing in February. So how do these intake and outcome changes appear to be impacting population balance calculation for these organization types? We're seeing that government-funded agencies, which have experienced increases in intake and compared to 2021, and less increases in outcomes, those are now seeing a lower PBC in 2022 compared to 2021. Private shelter organizations have experienced increases in intake compared to 21, but less increases in outcomes, and they're also seeing a lower PBC in 2021. Rescue organizations, which saw higher intake, have seen higher intakes in 2019, have also seen higher outcomes in 2019, and this has actually increased their PBC just a little bit. The improvements from 2019, though, weren't enough to get them over the equilibrium. So this just goes to show that looking at a single year in a vacuum isn't as valuable as looking at these trending information. So what are negatively impacting these organization types and their ability to outcome animals? According to a preliminary review on the National Sheltering Survey that was referenced earlier, among the most frequently cited factors negatively impacting government-funded organizations are lack of staff, followed by lack of transfer partners. For private shelters without government contract, lack of staff is the most frequently cited. And for rescues, a lack of fosters is most frequently cited. So again, keeping with those human-related reasons, with the addition of the transfer partner specifically for government funded. So we can also see some differences in regions. And while we're not releasing regional snapshots this time around, we did that last year during one of our quarterly report releases. You can look at regional data more closely by visiting our dashboards. These regions are based on census designation, and this is in the US only for now. So when it comes to regional intakes, and we've got the color coding of the region, you can kind of eyeball where your state is to know what region you're in. And then the color coding will follow through the slides. The Pacific region saw the highest increases in intakes compared to 2021. And this region still sees, though, about 24% less intakes compared to 2019. The West South Central, the East South Central, and New England regions all saw decreases in intakes compared to 2021. The West North Central has actually seen increased intakes compared to 2019, while the East North Central region is still lower, but is getting close to the 2019 levels too. For outcomes, we see that the Pacific region, again, had the highest increase in outcomes from 2021. But compared to 2019, they're still 28% less. West, South Central, East, South Central, New England, and South Atlantic all experienced decreases in outcomes compared to 2021. All regions continue to have lower outcomes than 2019, except the West North Central region again. So they're seeing increased intakes compared to 2019 and increased outcomes compared to 2019. So for the regional, walking through how those intakes and outcomes are working for each region. This is 2019 PBC. In 2019, regions experienced close to the same number of outcomes as intakes throughout the year. We're seeing pretty close to that 100% mark, with just 99% up to a 102 there for the mountain region. This helped to provide some equilibrium to the population in the areas. In 2020, PBC was much higher for the regions. We see well above 100% for several of them. And so these regions saw a decreased population going into 2021. Unfortunately, in 2021, we saw a pretty drastic decrease then in PBC. This it was in most cases, well, in all of the cases, all regions actually have in 2021 saw PBC lower than 2019 levels. This isn't necessarily a negative thing. These regions saw a decrease in population in 2020, so they could have been able to keep animals longer and increase their population. It may not mean that they were over capacity at the time. So it's not extremely alarming if you couple it with the previous years. However, we are now in 2022, and in 2022, we see that all of the regions continue to have a PBC lower than 100%. This region, the Pacific region, actually has less than 95% as the it's lower. 95% is the lowest PBC we've seen for the regions. We have the New England region, which was slightly better in 2021. This was due to a decrease in intakes and a slight decrease in outcomes as well. South Atlantic actually had similar intake numbers as 2021, but they actually saw a decrease in outcomes, leading to this drop in PBC down to 97%. Again, if you'd like to see more data for your region, you can visit our dashboards. And if you have any questions about the data in this presentation or the report that will be released tomorrow, feel free to contact us at info@shelteranimalscount.org. And I would like to just thank all of the orgs that contribute data to the national database regularly, and you're what make these reports possible. So I just wanted to thank you all for participating, and now I will pass things back over to Stephanie.
Stephanie, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Oh, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? So a couple of things I wanted to share that we had announced in an email a couple of weeks ago about what's ahead in 2023 that we're really excited about. We have long been wanting to explore into Canada. So we will be piloting that in 2023 of starting to collect Canadian data. We also know there's a huge interest and need for field services data, and there's a lot of questions in the chat that would be related to being able to have access to that data to understand some cause and effect and correlation or causation. And so we will be working with the National Animal Control Association this year to begin to collect some standardized field services data. We also know that a lot of organizations want to dive into their own data and may just not have those internal resources either on staff or within a volunteer group. But we often have people who are coming to us and wanting to help. So we are going to be looking to connect more of those resources that are the data experts and the analytics experts with the shelters and rescues who need that support, and also expanding and broadening our dashboards and automated reports and other tools for shelters to use to dig into their own data, not only for year-over-year comparison for yourselves, but also compared to like-sized or like-mission peers. And then we know that the data is only as good as the integrity and consistency that it's being entered and defined. And so it's been a long and needed thing for our industry to really standardize those data entry best practices, what constitutes a certain category versus another, and give real examples on what to do and not to do. We released some 6 data don'ts a couple weeks ago that started to enter some of those best practices and reminders on making sure your data is clean and consistent, and not only within an organization, but within every member of your team. So we'll be providing more and more guidelines for that. And then overall, we'll continue to share these insights on a quarterly basis with these larger reports, and then also some additional information along the way. Like Samantha mentioned, we'll be having additional reports coming out, diving deeper into those organizational differences, diving deeper into community services. And one of the things that I hope we can take from this is looking at, there's a lot of questions in the chat that we may or may not be able to even answer with the data that we currently collect. But on the organization level, you can answer that. And we'd love to partner and talk about telling your individual stories as well. There's also a lot of data that Samantha shared today that really indicates an opportunity for us to improve outcomes by really raising those adoption rates. And there's some conversations in the chat that we really could get back to basics and starting to, we kind of have created different things along the way over the past few years that we tried. Some have worked, some haven't, but we know what has worked over the past years with open adoption policies and all of those other promotions that we and research that we've known for years. We were talking in the chat a little bit about the research that was done on having too many options actually reduces adoptions because adopters get overwhelmed and then just don't adopt anything. So I really encourage you all to go back and really look at your processes and your policies and procedures and see what could we maybe test. Doesn't have to be even a complete shift if you're nervous about it, if you don't feel like you have the staff resources, but now's the time with the data that we've seen. We know what happens with what we've done for the past 4 years. And there's some pros and cons year over year that we could take the best of that and apply it now in 2023. We're only 30 days in, and we have a lot of time to really turn that needle and change the direction that we're headed. So with that, happy to take any questions. Otherwise, please reach out to us over email if you have any specific questions. Follow us on social media and look for that report in your email tomorrow.
Stephanie and Samantha, thank you so much for putting this out there. You can close down the presentation here, and I think we're trying to wrap it up here. So yeah, definitely send the emails and take this discussion over to the Maddie's forum. Was there anything on there, Claire, that you thought we needed to jump on here now? I know there's a lot of different things in the chat comment. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I know it gives us a lot to think about. Definitely we can continue this on the pet forum, and I'm also going to post a link to Allison Cardona's webinar, The Power of Yes, just welcoming the community, increasing adoptions and foster placements, as I know that's a big topic that we just saw. So I'm going to put that in the chat.
Well, but if you, anything from this, when you're making your decisions, use your decisions based on the data, not just on how you feel. We've done the feels for many, many years, and it doesn't always line up with the data. And then also be careful of drawing conclusions to data. Really make sure that you are doing, I did see a lot of hypotheses, which is terrific, but test them again, how we feel, or because we think X, Y, or Z may or may not have had an impact on why things are good and bad today. So, but at least having numbers to go from allow us to start to do that more deep dive, and agree completely with Stephanie on, we know there's things that worked in the past, and are we not doing those? That if you're not doing some of the things, there's a pretty good guess that they worked at some point. We do know that the world has changed in the last couple of years, so some things that worked in the past aren't as successful. So we all know we have a lot of work in this recap of 2022. I think we're all happy to have it in the rear view mirror, but use that to help propel us forward. So everyone, thank you so much. Allison, I get the thumbs up. Are we all good, or did I miss anything? Okay, I think we're all good. Claire, it is always wonderful hosting with you. Stephanie and Samantha, thank you so much. And everyone, we will see you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great week, everyone.